everyone, Darren Hunter here with Dennis Youssef, and we are from Inspired Growth Training, and we also with our podcast PM Growth Experts. And do we have a big hitter here today with Joe Iemma? Hi Joe, how you going?
Hey boys, how are you?
Yeah, you're looking good there, Joe.
Oh, thank you.
Alrighty, and Joe Iemma is the department head with Doyle Spillane Real Estate based in DY on the Northern Beaches in Sydney. Joe's got an enormous property management business. We've known Joe for many, many years, and Joe is known as one of the best quality operators with his team in the country. So, real privilege, Joe.
It's a big rap.
I know
it is.
Embarrassment. But look, before we get going, Dan, what's our retro record of the week?
So, look, Darren, I was actually trying to think of something that could suit you and suit Joe as well, obviously because of our age. So I got one of my top shelf.
Hang on, what do you mean about our age?
I'm saying that you guys are old.
Okay, me too. Now, when I was in the 80s, that was the record to have. Some couple of good songs on there. Was it New Year's Day, Sunday Bloody Sunday? Go
That's right.
You. Well, we're going to keep on moving on, but thanks for sharing that memory from the 80s, Dennis. Now, very quickly, our exclusive partner, Rockend, with their cloud platform, Property Tree, part of that system, they've got Invoice Genius. Now, for every invoice that you guys are keying in, there's a lot of invoices have a barcode or a QR reader on them. If you scan them through using Invoice Genius, you're going to be saving yourself. You see, if you go and manually key all of these things in, it's about 40 seconds each. If your property management business is 1,000 properties or 1,000 doors, you're looking at around about 20,000 invoices a year. But by using Invoice Genius, you're going to be saving yourself around about, instead of 4 weeks of somebody keying, it's around about 100 hours or 2.5 weeks of keying that doesn't have to be done by an expensive trust account person. So make sure, get in contact with Property Tree at propertytree.com.au, book in a demo and check out how Invoice Genius can save you guys a packet of time. So as Dennis said, you could be out prospecting instead of keying in invoices.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. Thanks for that, Darren. And yeah, look, go and speak to Rockend so you can do an extra 2 weeks of prospecting. So Joe, thank you so much for being on board with us today. It's exciting to have you. The very first real estate conference that I ever attended in Sydney, mate, you were on stage doing a BDM panel, and you also took out a BDM award. So it's an honor and a privilege to actually have you here today, buddy, and I really appreciate your time. So,
Pleasure.
Joe, why did you join real estate? Like, what got you into it?
Yeah, look, I was lucky enough to, we had a family friend who had an office in our area, and he pursued me for a couple of years before I sort of left school and sort of had me primed to start in the business. I didn't know much about real estate in general, except for the fact that, you know, they sold houses. And yeah, initially when I started this, I said, oh, you got to rent homes. And I thought, you know, who rents? I was, very naive, 18, straight out of school. And I thought everyone owned their own home. So yeah, it was a big learning curve for me, definitely.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us a little bit about your area, like your marketplace and where you are.
Yeah, definitely. We're on the Northern Beaches in Sydney. We sort of service an area from Manly to sort of Palm Beach, and out to sort of.
Can we just clarify? That's Palm Beach, New South Wales, not on the Gold Coast.
Not Gold Coast,
and not Florida, and not Florida.
Florida. Yeah. It'd be nice, Florida, but yeah.
Well, no. That's cool. Palm Beach, yeah. No, that's where Todd lives.
Yes, but yeah, the best thing about our business is that 90% of our properties that we manage are in a 5K radius of our office. So we're able to sort of manage a lot more easier with not massive travel times. You know, if we're traveling more than 10 minutes to get to a property, it's probably too much for us. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. You know, not too many people can really say that that's the case for their marketplace. Darren, I know that you're out there all the time. You know, how many minutes are you telling people that they should be, you know, stopping and thinking hard about not listing it? What's your rule of thumb?
Sorry, what was that again?
What's your rule of thumb if you're telling someone they shouldn't travel so far to do routine inspections, etc.?
Oh, well, the point is, my rule is no more than 30 minutes drive from the office.
Yeah, and Joe's 5 to 10 minutes.
Too many of those, and you're going to end up sitting part-time on a chair in a car, and working part-time managing a full-time rent roll. So distance is, you got to be you got to watch that.
So it's really good that you've got that rule. I think it's quite important, and more people need to look at it, because I know people that drive 2 hours for a listing. That's just, it's crazy. So well done, Joe. So Joe, how many properties have you grown in the last 12 months?
Yeah, look, we manage a portfolio of just under 1,000 properties. And I was looking at, our stats recently. We're up to about 110 for the last 12 months. So that's probably a little bit less than what we're used to. I guess our marketplace Sydney's gone through a bit of a transition with investors. The banks have made it really difficult over the last few years for investors to get into the market. The sales market has been really hot, so investors have sort of been sitting back because the returns haven't been there. We're starting to see the light now, and there's a little bit more of those investors coming back into the market. But also a lot of our owners who probably didn't have long-term plans to hold property over the last 3 or 4 years, if they wanted to get out, it's been the best time for them to do that. So yeah, potentially we're having to list 100 to 150 to just keep on par. So our growth numbers aren't massive, but we sort of recognized that a couple of years ago, and so we started to make some changes to our model and how we wanted to do business moving forward. And I guess Darren and yourself have been privy to what we've done with regards to maximising fees and sort of cutting any sort of properties that sort of weren't sort of making us money at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, your area certainly has been a hot market for purchases. With the Sydney market's just been ridiculous in the last 3 to 4 years, and you guys are in the heart of that. So Joe, if you were to meet yourself on the first day that you started in real estate, obviously you had no idea about real estate, as you shared earlier, but, go back and meet yourself when you're 18, so, let's say the 30-year-old Joe meets the 18-year-old Joe.
I wish I was 30. Look, I guess, again, starting out, then it's sort of, like being a director of a business, owning a business was probably something that, seemed so far away and not reality, I guess. So I think if anything, anyone that's 18 these days, there's so much opportunity out there, and sort of, have a goal in place and make that goal not one that you can achieve easily, I guess make it, something that gets you out of that comfort zone. So I guess for many years I worked, as I said, in a family business, and I was just treading water. I've probably learnt more in the last 10 years than I did in the first 20 years of my real estate career. So, I guess, for anyone starting out, just give it a go. If you're going to do something, make sure you do it properly and sort of really give it a go.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you're saying that, when you're 18, you never expected or thought you could own a business. So, writing those goals early, like it doesn't matter how young you are, set some goals and get them down, get them down pat.
Well, especially in our culture, like I guess, like even, my parents, came out from overseas. They were young. They didn't work, they worked. The only jobs they could get were probably the low paying jobs. They weren't business minded. So for me, I didn't have that when I was growing up, and those things seem so far out of reach. But then the reality is that once you start that journey, you can see that they're not so, you can reach those goals if you set them, definitely.
Yeah, excellent. So Joe, you start a rent roll from scratch. If you were to jump out now and start a rent roll from scratch, what would your top 3, growth things be? What would your top 3 growth strategies be?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think I'd go really hard on marketing really early. So again, going back to, what I've done over the last 10 years as opposed to the first 20 years, we've never really marketed ourselves. We just plodded along, thought, people know we do a good job and they'll come to us. But again, I find that when we do marketing, the results are very obvious. If we're doing a letterbox drop, the calls start. If we do run something in the paper, it happens. So, and I guess from a property management business, in years gone by, there wasn't a lot of marketing like that. It was all sales orientated, you know, like you didn't get drop cards from a rental manager. You still don't, you know, you just get a salesperson who's sold something or sprucing their services or whatever it may be. So yes, market really heavily. I would put some really sort of strong procedures in place because I believe they go hand in hand. I don't think you can have growth if you haven't got the back end to support that growth. So for me, that's really important. And yeah, I would just, every person that I came in contact with, like I think about it now, like if I had every person I came in contact with when I was 18 years old, 30 years later now, I would have this massive database. I've always worked in the same area. I've never moved, I've never moved more than a kilometre away from where I live, so I would have this massive database. But again, the first 20 years, we didn't keep everyone's details. We didn't sort of put them on a CRM that we could contact them regularly. And I guess over the last few years, that's changed a lot. So they're the three things that I have in place.
I like what you're saying because I'm always about, I'm always about collecting business cards. I've got piles of business cards on here, and people are always, and this is just, these business cards I've got here are just what I did in a conference in New Zealand. Anyone who asks me for a card, you take a business card off them because you're relying on them to call you if you just hand out your cards. So it's a really good point. And I love that you brought up, the contact management system. That, the last two that you've said is actually two in one. It's having the back end systems as well as, a system for a contact management system. Right up. Yeah. Now I've got a tricky one for you. Okay. So, you turn up to work on a Monday morning, Joe, and the bank rings you up. They're the first call. They ring you up and say, Joe, if you don't list 10 properties this week, we're going to shut the doors. Yeah. What do you do?
Look, I would just, again, I'd go back to that contact database and I would put together, a flyer, an offer, something, and send it to, I only checked the other day because we had my newsletter went out. I mean, I have 900 landlords on that system that get something from me once a month, twice a month. And it's amazing that every time I send out a newsletter, I just get a query, a question. It could be about real estate, it could be about something else, could be about someone needing help or someone looking for a place. So again, we do it all the time. But if I was in a situation where I needed to list 10, I might put an offer around that sort of, So that's the first thing I would do. Or go through my mobile phone. My mobile phone's becoming a little bit like that these days now. I could send a message to, just the people in my phone and there'll be business from that.
Yep. Okay, so you're picking up the phone, you're sending a newsletter out, and using a text as well, which is really good. So it's interesting because, like you said, these telephones, they are becoming a contact management system. They're doing everything. So, Joe, what are your biggest rent roll growth strategies that you've got that bring in, let's say, about 80% of your business? What's the key area that you're bringing most of your business in?
Look, current and ex-landlords and current and ex-tenants. And I've really drilled down into those numbers recently because, again, just trying to get better at, hey, where is this inquiry coming from? We're spending money on marketing. Are we getting the feedback? And obviously Google reviews goes without saying. A lot of our business is coming from Google reviews, which again, we're working really hard to sort of get that up. I think, we've got about 70 or 80 reviews and we're about a 4.7 star rating. So, we're sort of hanging in there with that. And it's sort of, that's something that needs to be constantly worked on, just asking and getting them from the team as well.
Yeah. So again, Darren, we've got someone here that's got quite a good and strong sales team. And Joe hasn't mentioned his sales team yet. This is an attribute to, just like Martina Berry in the last video, it's an attribute to both of them as BDMs. They're not relying on their sales team. Joe's got himself a great name for himself. They've been established for a long time. Tenants, referrals and old landlords.
Yeah. Look, we get so many tenants that come back to us. And this is where I talk about procedures are really important to have in place. And most of the tenants say, oh, we rented off you, and I say, oh, great. And I'm always a bit concerned when I get that because I don't know, because I know that, we're pretty strict when it comes to our processes when people are renting from us, whether it's paying the rent, whether it's leaving the property in a good order. So I'm always a little bit, and they say, oh, look, yeah, at the end of the day, we came back to you because, yeah, you guys were strict. You guys did the inspections. We always, every 6 months, we thought there was something wrong because you guys kept turning up every 6 months, where we'd rented before and no one was turning up to do an inspection. So we really liked that. And look, when we moved out, yes, we had to get, a cleaner in there. But now that I own the property, I want the same standards applied to my investment properties. So for us, that's massive. One of the things that we do is, and I'm sure everyone does it these days, but all our tenants get a welcome pack when they move into a property. Now all our tenants get a Christmas card every year. When we were at about 500 or 600, I used to handwrite, the team used to handwrite and sign the Christmas cards. So for us, that's just the standard thing that happens. We give out gifts every month for the best presenting property or the best tenant who, and we also do things like, if we know that one of our tenants is going through a rough trot, we will, give them $100 gift voucher for some groceries or things like that. So I think, again, and I do one of my passions is just to treat people properly. And I want my team to make sure that every day we're out there trying to help people, because people go through rough times. And sometimes I don't like, the way that, people within our industry, especially in property management, conduct themselves, the way they speak about tenants, or the way they diss people, because, at the end of the day, they're trying to do their best. They're going through rough times. We need to be there to help them. And I think, as an industry, we need to be doing that a lot better. And you know what? It pays dividends. Like, we get so many referrals from tenants. Oh, these people rented through you. They said you guys were really good. Great, fantastic, So yeah, for me, that's a passion that we've tried to instill in our business from day one.
I love that, because, especially for any of our, New Zealand listeners or USA clients, there's a lot of private owners out there. So if you're looking after your tenants, and, they can refer a private owner straight to you. So done.
And it's funny when I say that to landlords. Usually I say, oh, look, and then they say, oh, but you do all that for the tenant. I'm the landlord. You're supposed to be looking after me. And I say, the best way that we can look after you is to make sure that your tenant is happy. Because if your tenant is happy, they will stay, they will look after the property, and they'll pay the rent. If your tenant is unhappy with us or the agents that are giving them service, people move out, and the agent goes, oh, they were good tenants. Why did they move? The agent goes, oh, I don't know why they moved. They probably found something else. They don't even ask the question. Yet the tenant was probably unhappy because the agent's never getting back to them about repairs or maintenance or whatever it may be. So again, those agents that don't have those customer service standards in place are actually costing their landlords money at the end of the day. So for me, that's a biggie. And I like to think landlords that sign on with us have that same mindset, because again, if they don't have that mindset, well, they're probably not going to be on the same page as us. Yeah.
Well said, Joe. I mean, a good property manager would be documenting, especially if they've bought a house, because that's information to give to your sales team as well.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So
and we want to keep in touch with them for the next 5-10 years, because they'll buy or they'll do something. So again, we're not just contacting landlords that are through, have rented through us. We're trying to keep those tenants engaged with our business as well.
So I think very good message there. And when I've done work in your office, I just feel the culture of quality and consistency a lot better than what I see in a lot of other offices. But look, I just want to share a story. And as you know, Joe, Dennis and I, we specialize in working with businesses, not just to grow their businesses, their property management businesses, but to also grow their fee income too. And I was having a conversation with a very well-known national property management trainer. He looked me in the eye and he said, Darren, what you teach doesn't work or cannot work in Sydney. And that means getting better and higher fees. And I just, very respectfully with the gentleman, I just thought, well, you haven't seen the results then that I've received. But I have to state, Sydney's always been great with results, with this type of thing, but particularly your business has been the most successful that we've seen so far. And just very quickly, a number of years ago, I think, when we first connected, I was in your office, and it's a really important story, is that when we looked at your figures, you had about 1,000 properties. And you said, Darren, we are already too expensive in the market. We're a 7% agency. And I know other agencies out there, the tippy top, they're at 6%, others are at 5%, and we're actually starting to see 4%ers now more in the western suburbs of Sydney. But I looked at the system, and nearly all of your 1,000 properties were up there at 7%. Now, coincidentally, we were talking about fees and getting better fees, and the same day, you didn't know, I went down the road, I walked 100 meters down the road to one of your competitors that also had about 1,000 properties. And he didn't know that I'd been to see you either, because, we've got to be very careful with confidentiality. And he looked me in the eye and he said, Darren, there is no such thing as a 7% agent in this marketplace, and you cannot convince me otherwise. We're barely getting 5% and 6%. Now, what's the truth here? And the truth is according to your mindset. He believed that 7% was impossible, therefore he wasn't achieving it. So, of course, from that point, we went on, Joe, to work together. We increased your fees. We didn't touch your management fees or letting. We did the work and the other stuff. And I know with your permission, we were able to achieve up to an extra $40,000 extra in a month with the same amount of properties that we got before, which was amazing. We had a great time. And of course, that was a couple of years ago. So now you're going out into the marketplace. You have disqualified yourself to work on competing on fees, because you're not the cheapest. So now you have to compete on service instead. So to get the business, what are your best points of difference that you use to win the business on service?
And that's really important, because at the end of the day, service is always going to come to the fore, and we lose out on sometimes, and they end up coming back because they've had issues that have cost them money, or they're just not happy, they're not getting the communication from their property manager. But look, again, I believe if you got to have your back end, really sort of clicking along. So for us, our big point of difference is the way we do our ingoing inspections. We videotape and we walk through, we do a video before the tenant moves in. From that, we get a report that's 40 or 50 pages long. The standard in our area is 4 or 5 a standard REI form with a couple of tick boxes. And we have photos. So again, when I'm presenting that to a prospective landlord and showing them what the others do and showing them what we do, it's almost a no-brainer right from there. We're very strict on our screening process for tenants, and I do go, into that a little bit, and I really harp on that, because I think that, when you look at the biggest fears that landlords have, is the tenant going to pay the rent? Are they going to damage the property? So we basically try and take that out of the equation. Hey, we're going to make sure nine times out of 10, you're going to get the best tenant that's out there. And look, we're going to have a really thorough condition report. So if they move and they damage, there's not going to be an issue there. So so they're the two main things that I sort of emphasize. Obviously, with myself, I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm a director of the company. There's ownership there. I can't pass the buck. There's an issue. You're dealing directly with me. So I will, sometimes that puts you out there, and look, I take calls night, day, mornings, afternoons, whenever it may be. But, and I find that I just make myself available. But, people worry about that. So, I would never answer the phone after 5, or never answer it before 7 or 8. People are respectful. They don't ring you. And I believe if someone's ringing me, they're ringing me for a reason, and I need to deal with that. So regardless of what time it is. So, but yeah, there are our points of differences, our screening processes, the information we get from a prospective tenant, and our condition reports are by far a big one for us.
Can I add, Joe himself does the videos. I watch his videos at the leasings of the properties. Every now and then I'll pretend I'm a potential tenant. I ask a question, has it got air conditioning, or, and it's a great point, because Joe's doing the video marketing and all of this, and it actually attracts better quality tenants as well. So it's a really good script to use to an owner. It's not just that the strictness of your application process, it's how well you do your marketing that attracts those good tenants as well. So, well done.
And look, at the end of the day, I know that no owner will want to put in a bad tenant, but I know why it happens, because they're frustrated, it's vacant, the agent just wants to get rid of it. Again, we avoid been in that situation. We'd rather be open and transparent with our prospective landlords and say, let's leave it on for another week and get the right person, as opposed to just taking a gamble on someone. So
now, I'm going to throw a little bit of trivia here for everybody. It's very interesting. Different parts of the world when it comes to property management have different unique issues. So, for example, in the tropical areas of Australia, places like Florida, property managers are struggling with mold, for example, or in the cold places, they got mold. If I go to Alice Springs, right in the center of Australia, the property management, the properties out there have a lot of calcium in the water because the water is deep underground in the artesian basin, stuff like that. Now, for everybody, the most poisonous, most deadly spider in the world is called the Sydney funnel web. I mean, this spider just has to look at you and you are dead. In reality, if you get bitten, you don't get to a medical treatment and get anti-venom. Within an hour, you are cactus. Now, funnel web spiders are normal in your portfolio with tenants and the awareness of this spider which lives in your area. Tell us more.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we're quite immune to it, I guess. If a tenant rings up and says, I've got, a funnel web or a red back, we see red backs, so they're quite scary. They've got a bright red slash on their back. But we sort of go, well, what's the big deal? Just spray it or get rid of it or catch it or why are you calling us? That's not serious. So, yeah, we're a little bit...
That thing's not serious. Is that what you're saying?
It's ugly and it is very, very aggressive. And it's about half an inch size fangs. Not very nice.
I just send my wife. She's a property manager and she's frightened of spiders, so I just sent her around and get her to deal with it.
You're a game man.
That's cool. All right, next question. So. What we want from you, Joe, is your script. And this is the one-liner that every BDM or property manager across the planet gets. It's in the owner, in the listing presentation. The owner just wants to negotiate. So they throw out the one line. Joe, if you can match the management fee with the other agency down the road, they might be doing 5 or 6%. Joe, what's your classic response to that one-liner?
Yeah. So obviously depending on where we're at and how it comes up, I always find on the phone is always we get that sort of question and I try and avoid it as much as I can answering that on the phone. So I like to get in front of people because I think once they've got that information in front of them, our chances of getting the business are going to be greater. But generally if I get that at an appraisal, I would sort of say, look, we'd love to offer you a discount. Unfortunately, that would mean that we would need to sort of compromise, our level of service that we like to provide to our landlords. So our approach is quality and not quantity, and we want to be known as the standout agent in the area. Look, there's no doubt that other agents are happy to negotiate their fees, but unfortunately, from our experience, it's reflective of the service that they sort of offer. Doyle Spillane, we're about quality, not quantity, and we want to make sure we can sort of deliver on those promises that I've outlaid for you. So at the end of the day, we might be talking $10 a week approximately, $500 a year, $520. It's usually about a week's rent. I know that we're going to bring to the table more than a week's rent of value to you just by potentially leasing the property quicker. I showed you where, our average days on market is 14. The area average is 32. Already we're saving you a couple of weeks rent there. So is there any other part of the service that, you're not sure of or you want me to go over again? Because ultimately, we've had a chat and we seem to be on the same wavelength. You want the best tenant. I want to get you the best tenant. You want the best rent. I want to get you the best rent. What is it that's holding you back?
Yeah, I love that script. Response. Yeah, I love that script because Joe's actually just said to them he's saving him 2 weeks rent. So really they can't afford not to use him.
Yeah. No, that's good. You've got the stats, you've got the proof.
Yeah, and if they're worried about rental arrears, again, I generally have our rental arrears sheet that says, look, we've got 10 tenants out of 1,000 that owe more than 7 days rent, that's less than 1% of our portfolio. What is it that you're really worried about? Because, again, I think it's just knowing where they're coming from, knowing what those trigger points are for them, and sort of just, hammering down on that. So
Joe, what's the average rent you're dealing with across your portfolio at the moment?
Yeah, we're around $600 a week.
So 600 just for our American viewers times by 4 point. So we're looking at around about $2,600 a month in rent. And Joe, you are one of, well, the most expensive agency we have seen in Sydney. And still you're signing up those approximately 15 new properties every month. And that's not bad for a guy that's also the department head. You know, I know that it's very hard for you to be full-time as a BDM, but you're doing so well and you're still getting it and you're winning it on service instead of competing on fees. And I just take my hat off to you. So well done.
Yeah, so well done.
And look, that's important. Again, I stress the team. You need to have, the team's backing, because if they're not on board, then regardless of how many times I go out and chat to people and tell them we're going to do this, if I bring it back and the team doesn't, then they're going to go out the back door. But very rarely do we lose one based on poor service, or even, and look, I'm not, I don't believe that all our landlords don't get approached by other agents. I'm sure they do on a regular basis, but I'd like to think, we very rarely does someone go away from us because they've been offered something cheaper.
Excellent. Well done, Joe. That's a really congratulations to the team that you've got behind you. Obviously believe in the team, the systems that you've got, and that helps win the business over the line. So if we can just come back to, some of the rent roll growth stuff, what are some of the KPIs that you've got in place? What are some of the tasks that you do to generate and win business?
Yeah. And look, and for myself, it's always hard because I wear a couple of different hats, but look, when my department's running nicely and the staffing levels are right, then basically I find just talking to our current landlords, I make a pact I've got the list on my desk, and I will be making phone calls to current landlords, making sure they're happy. So again, I'm wearing two hats. I'm making sure they're happy, and then I will try and slide in there. Oh, do you know of anyone else that we could help? So and I'm messing them. I always give your details to people, Joe. So but again, just reminding them that hey, we're always on the lookout for new people. And at different times we've got different sort of offers going for our landlords as well, because I'd rather reward someone that's loyal to us, and if they can give me a lead or something, then I'm happy to look after them as well. So that, calling current landlords is really important for me. I do attend sales opens, sales auctions. I find that I get some really good feedback from that. We have an investor support service. Dennis will be happy with that. And we've worked on that over the last few years. Again, time sometimes takes us away from that, but I like to attend, a couple of open houses on a Saturday where I can potentially meet some new investor clients. And again, it's not a big sell. It's just, we're here to help. There's my card. Can I keep you on my database? Then they start to get the newsletter. Then, we start to be perceived as the expert in the area. And again, I'm not, even when I'm going out listing, I'm not that pushy BDM who wants them to sign on the spot, or is going to harass them. I try and look, I'm there to help them. And I'll give them as much information as they want and help them. And you know what? People sometimes go with other agents and they have problems and they ring me for advice, and I give them the advice, So, regardless whether hopefully one day they'll come back to us or come to us or send someone else to us. So, they're probably, I think keeping in touch with current landlords, which again, I'm probably lucky to have because of my position as a director. I can understand BDMs might sort of clash there. If you've got a couple of BDMs, who gets to call who, that could be an issue. But look, sales open houses work very well. And also those, I said, I've got about 900 previous landlords that I will, depending on what's happening, if my pipeline isn't looking too secure for the next few months, I might start to ring those people and say, how's everything going? Spotlets, we do, I don't know what they call them around the world, but we call them spotlets, lease only.
Casual lets.
Casual leasing for our Americans.
Yeah. And again, I will ring those people. How's your tenant going that we put in 5 years ago? Oh, still great, Joe, So again, I'm touching base with those people as well. So awesome, for me, that's what works. I'd rather spend time on a lead or a client that or I already have than spend money trying to get someone off the street who potentially is going to be wanting the cheapest agent, or potentially is not going to know much about us that we're having to, do the big sell on.
Yeah, well done, Joe. And I can just add for the listeners out there, Joe is using Inspect Real Estate BDM. So it's
Yep.
actually a newsletter for property managers to go out. It's not just an office one that's pushing sales
Yep.
listings this weekend. So it is important that you do have that as well.
Yeah.
Look, I remember, Joe, the first time I met you, you know, as I said earlier, you were at the conference and you were on stage speaking. And, you know, I had just been given the reins as a BDM, and I come running over to you at lunchtime or morning tea, whatever it was. And I said, Joe, how do you ask for the business? What do? You know, how do you get the signature? And just like Joe said, he wasn't that pushy salesperson. He wasn't that, you know, he goes, you know, I go there, I talk to them. If they want to sign up, you know, we will. If they don't, that's cool. I'll give them a call in a few days' time. And I'm like, no. You got to ask for the business. This isn't calculating. I couldn't comprehend, but you are proven that it works. And
No.
you know,
But I need to get better at that, because, you know, that if anything, you know, and again, that's a fault of mine, that sometimes I don't push hard enough. So I, you know, again, and that's one of the things about, you know,
do you want me to give you a script? Do you want me to help now?
You've given me scripts, and I've just got to work it into my, you know, into my dialogue. But, you know, that's over the years, the biggest thing is that, you know, I meet people all the time, whether it be property managers, BDMs, whatever, and they say, I've been in real estate for 10 years, you know, but I look at them and I think, you know, they've had 1 year experience and they're just replicating that for the last 10 years. They've never grown. For me, it's always about trying to grow. I go to a lot of training seminars. I follow you guys all the time.
You go to all the conferences. You're
all
always
the conferences,
there, always learning, always learning.
Absolutely.
And for me,
yeah.
and that's important. You know, you always got to be improving, because if I was the same agent that I was 10 years ago, I wouldn't be getting the business today. If I was the same agent 20 years ago, I wouldn't be getting the business today, because there's young guys coming in with all the sales skills. And, but yeah, I need to get better at that, because, and, you know, I don't take the authority with me, you know, like I don't get them to sign on the spot, and that can be detrimental sometimes, but sometimes it works for me. So I've got to find that happy balance. I've got to have it with me.
I'm going to help you right now, Joe. I'm going to help you find that balance. Let's pretend this is an authorization form, okay?
Yeah.
Not an authority. It's called an authorization form. It doesn't matter what country.
Paperwork.
It's the paperwork, but it's an authorization form. So you're in the property and an owner says, Joe, how are you going to advertise my property? You know, and Joe, this is where you go for the close. This is where you go for the kill right now. It's such a soft question. And it's, you know, Joe, that's a really good question. You know what? Let's go through my authorization form here about it. It explains how we market the property in detail, and you'll even have a choice of how you do it. So let's go sit down and we'll go through it all. And when I get to the marketing section, I'll spend a little bit of extra time with it. Okay. And your name is? I've just sat you down for a close. Anyway, let's move on.
But that's right. Look, it works different for different people.
It does.
And
it does depend on the client you've got as well. You know, there's a lot of variables to consider. I get
that. But I've walked out and thought I've got that business, and you know what? They go with someone else. And I know that if I had you know, been pushier, I could have signed that business on the spot, but I've allowed it. But, you know, look, you win some, you lose some. I listed one the other day because, you know, she wasn't even going to get a second agent in, because she was happy with the fees that, you know, the other agent was charging her. And she, by chance, she rung us for some reason, because we had sold it to her 20 years ago, and was ringing us just on the off chance that we would negotiate our fees. So in the end, I got in front of her. I spoke to her again, and speaking to her ended up a couple of hours and delved, you know, into sort of what was going on in her life, which was not good, and she needed assurance. And she was happy to go with me, because she said, yeah, the other guy, as soon as she said that she wanted to speak to someone else, he just was at her and wouldn't leave until she signed, and she refused to sign. And then that opened the door for me to go in there and sign it. I didn't sign her up on the spot, but I signed her up the next day. So again, you just got to pick your mark, I think.
Yeah, you do. There's a lot of variables to consider there. So Joe, what's your next growth goals in the next 12 months? And, you know, and how are you going to achieve that?
Yeah, like definitely. That's a big thing for us, because, you know, we've gone through a marketplace where we needed to be settled and stable, and our team needed to be stable as well. We had, we've put on a couple of extra people sort of to help us, because I believe in planning for everything. So we've got the team right now. We've put a couple of extra staff, so we're a couple of staff heavy. So I can go out and because we've been hanging around that 1,000 mark for a couple of years. So we just really want to take it to the next level now. Where in the past we've been happy to consolidate. We've been able to get more income through, as I said, the work we did with Darren. But now we want to, step up to the next step and put on, a couple of 200, 300, 400 in the next couple of years. And that's, net, I guess, not sort of gross. But for me, yes, I'm looking to be just in that BDM zone. So again, that, marketing has to start again. We went for a while in the market and we dropped off. So I've already got the next 12 months of letterbox drops organised. I've put in place, we're doing something a little bit different with some guarantees for landlords. So I'm really going to start to push the envelope on service and guarantees, such as, and they're simple ones like, if your tenant doesn't pay the rent, we will. Like, it's a no-brainer. And people freak out about that. Other agents would freak out about that. But when you think about it, we have 10 tenants that owe more than 7 days rent. We haven't got a problem with people paying the rent. So why wouldn't we go out there and say, what, if your tenant doesn't pay, we'll pay. Obviously, there's some terms and conditions, and not many, just the fact that they have landlord insurance. So, that's what we're going to be doing, sort of really getting that out in our marketplace, because that's going to counteract, the 4 and 5% agents that are out there at the moment.
We look forward to seeing that net growth that you're going to get, and certainly, we'll just be sitting and watching, and certainly wanting to help you on that journey along the way. So, last question now. So, Joe, we are very fortunate enough to have you on our BDM heavyweight panel at the Inspired Growth Conference this year. But here is my last question. You're on stage at the Inspired Growth Conference. In front of you are business owners and the best BDMs in Australia. And you've got a minute to speak to them directly. You'll have a bit more, of course. But, what is your message then, if you've got such a short period of time? What's your message to them about getting really strong growth, but also how to get the best fees? Don't compromise on that, and being an agency that competes on service. What would be your message in that situation?
Definitely look for an employer or a company owner. I would be saying have a BDM in place, because, and again, that's changed over the last 5-10 years. BDMs, people just expected property managers to grow their rent rolls. It's not going to happen. So again, have a BDM in place, and then make sure your property management team is stable, and give them the resources that they need. Don't sort of, give them the Inspect Real Estate, give them technology, because if they're doing their job, the BDM is going to be out there and sort of bringing back the business, and you want that staff to be happy as well. So, incentivize them, look after that staff as well. But definitely have a BDM in place who can just concentrate on growing that business. But in saying that, have some really strict guidelines around that. You don't want them going out there bringing back 20, discounted management fees, or 20 properties that aren't sort of up to scratch, because that's going to irritate the property management team. So just finding that balance, but having a good BDM and having a strong back end to support him is essential in this day and age. That's for sure.
Cool. Really good advice there. That's some really good stuff. I mean, I see and speak to a lot of principals that are too scared to put a BDM on, Joe, because they're looking at a let fee that should be covering their wage, and they're expecting them to bring in 30 properties to cover a wage per month. But as you know, it doesn't work that way.
Oh no! Look, it's short-sighted. Like, at the end of the day, it's not going to, it's not going to happen. That's the reality. Like, if I was a property manager, you wouldn't have time to be making those phone calls, chasing up those leads from IRE or whatever it may be. They've got so much going on. Like, and property management in 2018 is so far removed than it was even 5 years ago. They have so much to deal with. So the last thing you would expect them to do is drop everything and sort of go out and see a client, who wants to rent a house.
Excellent.
Well done, Joe. It's been a real pleasure. Well, I think, Dennis, we'll wrap it up now. And you feel that the session went okay?
Yeah, look, Darren, I think that Joe did a great job. He's got a lot to give. I'd like to just to get out I think there's an album that I'd like to get out of my record collection, Joe. I think that, let me just see. Look, Joe, I might even play this one for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to sing the song. Sing a song off it.
I think
No, I'm bad.
I'm bad. Who's bad? Oh, well done. So yeah,
you guys are bad.
Yeah, that's fine. And Joe, thank you very much. Looking down, we feel like the Brady Bunch here, so all good, really good. Let's wrap it up, guys. Great interview,
Lovely.
Joe. You are a quality operator, one of the best we've ever worked with. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us. And yeah, cool. Take care.
Pleasure. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.